There's a very strange moment you may have experienced. The deeper you think, the less you want to speak. The clearer you see, the more you feel yourself standing slightly off from the crowd, like a small crack on a pane of smooth glass. And the strangest part is that you aren't attacking anyone. You're simply looking straight at what everyone has learned to avoid. Yet the air changes. The conversation naturally shifts to something else, as if depth were a kind of rudeness. Society isn't afraid of intelligent people in the sense of knowing a lot. Society is afraid of the kind of intelligence that forces people to ask whether they're living by truth or by habit. When a deep thinker walks into a room, they're like a mirror, reflecting the limits of everyone else. If you've ever been misunderstood simply because you take truth seriously, this video will make you shiver. I'll show you why the crowd turns inferiority into morality as a form of revenge, and most importantly, how Nietzsche teaches you to walk through loneliness without losing yourself. There's a section in the middle that will flip the entire story. If you miss it, you'll never recognize the real mechanism that is steering human beings. Number 1. Mirror effect. Intelligence makes others feel smaller. Think back to a moment, maybe a meal, a coffee, a group meeting. Everything is moving along in a familiar rhythm. Then you suddenly ask a question that's just a little deeper. You aren't attacking anyone. You're simply opening a door. But at that exact moment, the room seems to sink. People fall silent for a beat, then change the subject, then chuckle it off, then return to what feels safe. You see something cold pass through their eyes. It isn't open hatred. It's the feeling of being watched. And this is the mirror effect many people can't name. Intelligence, when it hits the right place, doesn't just introduce ideas, it turns you into a mirror, and anyone standing near it sees their own face more clearly than they want to. People can stand next to someone strong and acknowledge strength as an external advantage. People can stand next to someone wealthy and call it luck, opportunity, or the times. Those kinds of comparisons still leave an escape route because they don't force anyone to question who they are. But intelligence sits in a deeper region, the region people use to define their own worth. Many people live by a quiet inner story. I understand life. I have a viewpoint. I know right from wrong. When you show up with a sharper lens, a deeper question, an ability to connect what others only see as scattered, you don't just make them lose a contest, you make them doubt the ground they stand on. Nietzsche once hinted at an uncomfortable truth. Human beings don't only fear pain, they fear the kind of truth that shakes the mask they call me. Nietzsche saw it as a defensive reflex of a soul not yet strong enough to take responsibility for itself. You don't need to say, "I'm smarter." You only need to refuse cheap answers. And precisely here, Nietzsche once warned, in a line that cuts straight through the human habit of self-protection, convictions are more dangerous enemies of truth than lies. You touch their convictions, and immediately, some people will find you unpleasant. In reality, they find themselves unpleasant, but they don't dare name that feeling. So they pin it on you to breathe easier. Science has a colder way to describe the same thing. When people feel competence threatened, the brain often triggers a defensive response similar to facing danger, because the social instinct treats losing face as a form of insecurity. People fear being seen as not enough. So a sharp mind doesn't only offer knowledge, it accidentally activates a chain of reactions. Denial, mockery, changing the subject, minimizing, or pushing you out of the game. People do it to regain a sense of control. You can recognize this when you offer a gentle suggestion at work, point out a logical hole in a plan, and someone immediately says, "You're overcomplicating things." You aren't breaking the plan. You're breaking their feeling of, "I'm fine." And for many people, that feeling matters more than truth. The mirror effect becomes strongest when intelligence comes with precision in language. A clear speaker makes the vague feel hollow. A well-placed question exposes the one living on slogans. Someone who can see through hidden motives makes the role player feel stripped. Nietzsche doesn't advise using intelligence to defeat others, because he understands that kind of victory only swaps one ruler for another. Nietzsche wants you to see the mechanism. When you make others feel smaller, you touch their deepest fear. And that fear rarely speaks in words. That fear speaks in attitude. When you understand the mirror effect, you stop being naive. You stop believing everyone dislikes you because you don't fit in. You stop trying to shrink yourself to match the mold. You begin to see a truth that is both sad and liberating. Many conversations don't fail because you're wrong, but because you're more honest than people can bear. You see why sometimes you only need to stay quiet and people still feel uneasy, because a silence with depth becomes a wordless question. And here, Nietzsche asks a ruthless but necessary question. Do you want to live like a sedative for others, or like an awakening dose for yourself? When you can answer that, you'll understand that the loneliness of deep thinkers isn't always an accident. Sometimes loneliness is the sign that you've stopped betraying truth in exchange for comfort. Number 2, Nietzsche diagnoses the root disease, herd morality. A different person, even if gentle, is still recognized by the herd's nervous system as a dangerous variable, because difference always signals something frightening. Order can be rewritten, the rules can change, and those who benefit from stability will never forgive anyone who forces them to learn how to breathe again. Nietzsche called it herd morality, a value system not born from truth, but from the need to survive in a crowd. And he nailed it down with a line so short it feels icy. Morality is the herd instinct in the individual. That is why in so many environments, the predictable person is often loved more than the deep one. My friend David once told me about an experience at his old company. In a meeting, he suggested that the plan was chasing KPIs while neglecting customer experience. And what he received was silence, and the reply that, as employees, we should only follow the plan set by the board. And then the meeting continued as if nothing had happened. In that moment, David didn't break the plan. He broke the crowd's sense of safety because the crowd doesn't dare say what it really thinks. When you are different, you reveal that they chose safety over honesty long ago. Here, Nietzsche does something that makes many people shudder. He isn't only talking about psychology, he's talking about instinct. Human beings once lived in tribes, and survival depended on not being cast out. Even though modern society has replaced forests with cities, the brain still carries that ancient memory. So when someone is different, the herd reacts as if it has encountered a contagion. That is why you hear phrases that sound harmless, yet carry violence. They're not like us. They don't fit the culture. They don't blend in. Those words do not describe you. They are protecting their comfort. Nietzsche called this the herd's art. Turning fear into norms, turning norms into morality, and then using morality to punish the different without having to feel guilty. From Nietzsche's perspective, the herd doesn't only want you to be silent, the herd wants you to be like them. Sameness creates a false sense of safety because everyone knows which role to play. Here, Nietzsche touches something bitter. Most virtues society praises are not nobility, but techniques for maintaining order. When society says humility, sometimes it means don't rise too high. When society says don't judge, sometimes it means don't question our game. Here, another philosopher's angle can help you see more clearly. Kierkegaard spoke of the crowd as something that dissolves personal responsibility, because when you blend into the crowd, you can escape the question, what am I living for? Nietzsche goes further and says, the herd doesn't only dissolve responsibility, it redefines the good so that difference becomes guilt. You see this everywhere. In schools where a different child is forced to fit in workplaces where someone who doesn't match the culture gets pushed out, and online, where an opinion outside the tribe gets branded. Each time, society reinforces a silent message. Safety lies in sameness, and danger lies in becoming yourself. But the most frightening part is that the herd doesn't only suppress through violence, the herd uses affection. The herd uses concern as a leash. Lines like, I just want what's best for you. I'm only worried about you. Don't be different or people will talk, sound soft. But inside them is a command. Put society's approval above your truth. Nietzsche called this domestication because people are taught to fear their own creative instincts. And that is when you understand why society fears the different. Because the different prove that life does not have to be this way. When you grasp Nietzsche's diagnosis, you stop blaming yourself for feeling pushed to the margins. You'll see that many times you were excluded, not because you lacked value, but because you were a variable. But you will also face a harder question, the one that leads into the next part. If the herd punishes the different, what weapon do they use to make themselves look righteous? Nietzsche has a name for that weapon, and it begins with a deep, hidden resentment that very few people dare to stare at. Number 3. Ressentiment. When the weak turn inferiority into morality to take revenge. Ressentiment doesn't arise when someone outpaces you in money or status, because you can still blame those things on luck. Ressentiment strikes hardest when you meet someone who makes you feel less at a deeper level, a level tied to dignity, the ability to think, to create, to see through things. When people feel powerless in the face of that superiority, they can't easily say, I'm jealous, because pride won't allow it. So their mind begins to manufacture a different story to save itself. They turn powerlessness into morality, inferiority into righteousness, and the one above them into someone hateful. Nietzsche names it in Genealogy of the Morals. The slave revolt in morality begins when the ressentiment itself becomes creative and gives birth to values. At this point, Nietzsche is sharp as a blade. The weak don't only want revenge, they want to be seen as fair while taking revenge. You can recognize ressentiment by the way it speaks. It rarely says, I can't keep up with you. It says, you're too complicated, you talk too much, you think too negatively, you're always acting like you know better. Don't make others feel stupid. And what's frightening is that ressentiment makes the speaker believe they stand on the side of righteousness. They don't see themselves as envious. They see themselves as protecting harmony. Nietzsche calls this a reversal of values. Those without creative strength rename their powerlessness, and then call powerlessness humility, call compromise kindness, call habit maturity, and call mediocrity being realistic. You can see it in painfully familiar scenes. Someone in your friend group starts studying more, reading, training, practicing restraint, and speaking more plainly about personal boundaries. That person hasn't offended anyone. Yet, a few weeks later in the group chat, lines appear like, "You're such a philosopher lately. Stop trying so hard." If you look closely, you'll see they aren't upset by a specific action. They're upset by the existence of a new standard. That new standard forces them to ask, "Why am I not doing that?" And because they don't want to face that question, they choose the easier path, smearing the new standard so they don't have to change. If you've ever been in this situation, pause for 10 seconds and remember, what did you say or do that made people uncomfortable? And what sentence did they throw back to pull you down? You don't need to tell a long story. Just write that exact sentence in the comments, along with what you felt in that moment. Nietzsche sees this as a technique of slave morality because it strikes directly at your sense of guilt. The most dangerous part of ressentiment is that it makes capable people begin to doubt themselves. You start cutting away the strongest part of you just to fit the comfortable outfit society has tailored. Nietzsche would call this a modern tragedy. Those who can create value end up begging for acceptance from those who only know how to consume value. When you ask their permission to be yourself, you hand the key to your soul to the crowd. And the crowd won't open the door for you because the crowd needs you inside the cell so they can feel like the jailer. When you understand ressentiment, you begin to see everything with different eyes. You realize not every piece of advice deserves to be heard, because some advice is simply inferiority wearing the costume of kindness. You realize some people don't want you to move forward, because every step you take exposes their stagnation. You stop wasting time trying to prove you're not superior, because ressentiment doesn't need evidence. Ressentiment only needs you to shrink. And right here, we touch the doorway into the next part. If ressentiment is how the herd takes revenge through morality, then what foundation made morality such a powerful tool of domestication, so powerful that people fear guilt more than they fear living a lie? Nietzsche will take you to the place most people avoid, because that is where traditional morality and religion begin to operate like an invisible collar. Number 4. Religion and traditional morality as tools of domestication. Nietzsche doesn't view religion as a story about heaven or hell. He sees it as a technology of psychological domestication, an invisible collar that tightens itself the moment the wearer tries to step out of line. When society wants people to be easy to manage, society doesn't need constant violence, because society only needs people to watch themselves. Nietzsche describes human beings as creatures once wild, once instinctive, once full of spring and force. If society wants stability, society has to do one thing. It has to prevent that instinct from being released outward. When an animal is caged and still has energy, it will smash itself against the bars until it collapses. Nietzsche calls this process domestication, and he says society achieved it by driving violence inward. When people are not allowed to vent their anger, not allowed to display ambition, not allowed to speak plainly, the energy doesn't disappear, because energy does not simply evaporate. That energy turns back inward and creates a bad conscience, creating self-blame, self-punishment, and the feeling of being wrong, even when all you want is to live honestly. Nietzsche is especially piercing when he analyzes the ascetic ideal, which he sees as a machine that converts suffering into meaning. When people suffer, they want a reason, because the mind fears meaninglessness. Traditional religion offers an answer that is sweet and poisonous. You suffer because you are guilty. That answer stabilizes society instantly because people no longer look outward to question the system. They turn inward to condemn themselves. Nietzsche speaks plainly without dodging, as if he pulls the curtain down right in front of you. Debt towards God. This thought becomes an instrument of torture. A poor person no longer asks about structure. They ask whether their faith is sufficient. An oppressed person no longer asks about power. They ask whether they have been obedient. A person trying to break free no longer asks whether they have enough courage. They ask whether they are arrogant. Nietzsche calls this the genius of moral power. Power makes the victim take responsibility for the chains, and then the victim even feels noble for enduring them. When you understand this, you'll see why an independent thinker is frightening. They don't just break a belief, they unlock a lock. And that lock is what keeps the whole house of society from shaking. A very familiar example lies in the way we grow up. Many families don't need to mention God to still have a hidden religion, the religion of being good and owing. When children talk about dreams, the family asks whether that career is stable. When children talk about boundaries, the family asks whether they are filial. When children talk about exhaustion, the family asks whether they are weak. A young person starts reading, starts reflecting, starts questioning marriage, career, the meaning of living, and they are quickly labeled overthinking or deviant. Nietzsche wants you to see that society doesn't hate you because you're wrong. Society hates you because you've stopped believing in pre-packaged answers. When you stop believing, you become hard to domesticate. Michel Foucault later called this kind of power disciplinary power because it doesn't need to beat you. It teaches you to stand a certain way, look a certain way, and feel shame at the right time. Nietzsche would likely nod because he saw the same essence. The system creates self-governing people to save the cost of ruling. When you believe an invisible pair of eyes is always watching, you live as if there is a policeman inside your head. The most important thing Nietzsche wants you to see through is this. Traditional morality doesn't only teach you how to live, it teaches you how to feel about yourself. That morality teaches you to feel ashamed of desire, to fear ambition, to distrust your inner strength. That morality doesn't necessarily make you a bad person, but it can make you an easily controlled person, because someone who always feels guilty will always look for someone to grant forgiveness. Nietzsche wants people to move beyond that state through one difficult act, daring to ask, does this value serve life, or does it serve domestication? When you ask that question, you begin to loosen the collar. When you loosen the collar, you'll understand why society fears you. Society isn't afraid that you know a lot. Society is afraid that guilt can no longer lead you by the nose. And once you've seen morality as a tool of power, the story shifts to something even more practical. In a group, people don't only use morality to domesticate, they use morality to protect status. The next part will show why, in large groups, intelligence and difference are not only disliked, but actively eliminated as a threat to an invisible hierarchy. Thank you for staying with me this far. Because if you're still here after this section, it means you aren't looking for quick comfort. You're looking for a truth that might unsettle you and might also set you free. Don't leave yet, because there's a detail later that will make you revisit many relationships and understand why there were times you were pushed to the margins without even knowing why. If what you just heard touched a real point in your life, you can leave a like as a small marker that you've recognized the mechanism. And if you want to keep going with stories that strike at the root, subscribe so we don't lose each other again in the crowd's noise. Number 5. Intelligence collides with the status game. After you've seen how religion and traditional morality can become an invisible collar, you begin to grasp something even more real. Even when no one mentions God, the group still worships something every day: status. And this is where intelligence touches the most sensitive nerve. In a group, a conversation is rarely just a conversation. It is a quiet performance about who is respected, who has the right to conclude, who has the right to judge, and who is treated as small. Nietzsche calls the deeper layer of the human being the will to power, but he isn't speaking only of oppressive power. He is speaking of the instinct to secure one's position in life. Every group has an invisible ladder, and everyone knows, whether they admit it or not, that stepping wrong by even one rung can cost them their voice, their influence, their sense of being recognized. Many people can accept having less money or less luck, but very few can bear the feeling of being seen as shallow, because being seen as shallow means they no longer have the right to lead the story. Nietzsche calls this the ranking instinct, and he believes civilization only changes its form. The struggle for position doesn't disappear. It simply puts on polite clothing and speaks in the language of morality. You can see the status game most clearly in meetings, because a meeting is an arena. When someone presents a familiar solution, the whole room nods, because a familiar solution threatens no one. But when you offer a new angle, or you ask a question that exposes a false assumption, you'll see reactions that are out of proportion to the question. Someone cuts you off with a joke to cool things down. Someone says you're being theoretical, even though you've just pointed out a practical risk. Someone drags you into petty wordplay to avoid looking straight at the larger issue. Someone pretends to agree, then quietly tells the boss that you're hard to work with. These behaviors may look different, but they serve the same goal: keeping the ranking order intact. When you are a deep thinker, you are often pushed into a trap. If you keep speaking, you're labeled arrogant. If you go silent, you're labeled not contributing. If you explain, you're labeled long-winded. If you simplify, you're distorted. This is the tightening loop of the status game, because the goal is not dialogue. The goal is to place you lower, so everyone can feel the hierarchy remains stable. Nietzsche once said that society always contains invisible distances between leaders and followers, between those who define values and those who follow values. When you bring intelligence into the room, you inadvertently compete for the power to define. You are not fighting for a seat through a job title, but through the ability to see the essence. And the power to define is the real power, because whoever defines right and wrong controls the emotional weather of the whole group. You'll also notice something many people experience but can't name. In private conversations, people are more open with you, but in a group, they avoid you. The reason is status. In private, no one is being compared in front of an audience, so they can be curious, ask honestly, and admit they don't understand. But in a group, every stupid question feels like a point deducted in someone else's imagination. So instead of asking, they choose mild attacks, teasing, or silence. They don't resist intelligence because it is wrong. They resist it because intelligence can make them lose points in the eyes of a third party. Nietzsche would say the herd doesn't only fear truth. The herd fears truth because truth reshuffles rank. And when rank is threatened, people become cruel in a very civilized way. They don't hit you, they make you feel out of place. They don't forbid you to speak, they make you speak and feel strange for it. They don't drive you out, they make you walk out on your own because you no longer feel you belong. When you understand this, you stop being surprised by weird reactions in groups. You stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" And you begin asking Nietzsche's real question, "What power did I touch?" You see that many conflicts are not conflicts of ideas, but conflicts of rank wearing the mask of ideas. And you'll be ready for an even harsher truth in the next part. If, in real life, the status game already suffocates intelligence, then in the digital age, that game is amplified by algorithms, by crowds, by speed, and by an addiction to judgment. The next section will show you why social media turns shallowness into a reward and turns depth into a target for stones thrown from everywhere. Number 6. The digital age makes the fear of intelligence explode. Once you've seen how the status game in real life kills intelligence with a raised eyebrow and a joke, you'll understand why the digital age makes everything erupt like a fire fed by wind. Social media isn't only a place where people talk, it's a machine for distributing attention, and that machine runs on a cold criterion. Whatever keeps you there longer wins. In a world like this, depth becomes hard to sell, not because it lacks value, but because it demands time and stillness. Two things the attention economy deliberately steals from you. People can sit and scroll for hours, yet their brains bristle at an idea that needs 10 minutes to sink in. The algorithm doesn't hate intelligence the way humans do, but it doesn't reward intelligence, because intelligence rarely produces an instant reaction. The algorithm rewards what stimulates quickly, outrages quickly, and creates quick agreement. And in that rhythm, intelligence becomes a strange object, like someone speaking softly in a night market. Nietzsche would call this the age in which the herd has found the perfect megaphone, because digital platforms turn sameness into profit and turn difference into a target for stones. You can verify it through your own experience on TikTok, Reels, Shorts, or any platform's feed. A video that says everyone is toxic can spread faster than a video explaining the mechanisms of wounds and personal responsibility, because the former gives the viewer a clear enemy, while the second forces the viewer to look at themselves. Nietzsche once said, "People don't hate truth because it is hard. People hate truth because it keeps them awake, and the digital age is where being kept awake is treated as failure." The digital age also creates a kind of new religion that Nietzsche would recognize instantly. This new religion doesn't need a church because it has hashtags. It doesn't need rituals of prayer because it has rituals of condemnation. It doesn't need priests because it has accounts that lead the crowd with absolute certainty. In the era of God is dead, people often fall into emptiness, and that emptiness needs a substitute value system to cling to. Many cling to being on the right side as if it were salvation, because being on the right side gives them an identity, a sense of belonging, and a legal reason to hate others. Nietzsche warned that people can abandon the old gods and still keep the need for religion, and the digital age turns that need into a machine for producing enemies. When the crowd has an enemy, the crowd feels meaningful. When the crowd feels meaningful, the crowd can no longer tolerate an intelligent person questioning the foundation, because a foundational question is like pulling the rug out from under someone who is standing. The intelligent person is attacked not only because they are wrong, but because they shake the collective identity the crowd uses to hide from nihilism. A real dialogue tends to move slowly, because real dialogue requires people to endure silence, endure uncertainty, endure the possibility that they might be wrong. Meanwhile, social media is designed for fast reactions because fast reactions keep you there. Behavioral researchers have described intermittent reward as something that makes people addicted, and social media runs by the same logic as a slot machine's lever. Sometimes you're rewarded with hearts, sometimes with comments, sometimes with the feeling of defeating someone in an argument. Nietzsche does not praise the humility of the fearful, but he respects the courage to look straight into chaos without running to dogma. None of this is meant to make you hate social media, because social media is only a mirror that magnifies herd instinct. This is simply to help you see the context clearly. The digital age makes the fear of intelligence explode because it turns instinctive reactions into daily habits and turns those habits into instant rewards. When you see the mechanism, you stop being surprised that speaking truth is getting harder, that depth is getting lonelier, and that the herd is growing more aggressive toward those who refuse to simplify. But you will also face Nietzsche's most important question, the question that opens the next part. If the outside world is designed to push you into shallowness, what will you do to keep the inner world from being domesticated, so your intelligence doesn't turn into bitterness and your solitude doesn't collapse into nihilism? Number 7. So how should an intelligent person live? Nietzsche doesn't promise that you will be loved, understood, or celebrated. He promises only something far more dangerous. You can be free if you dare to pay the price. And the price here is not playing the role of an ascetic, nor crawling into a cave to curse humanity. The price is that you stop asking the crowd for permission to become yourself, and you begin to build a life you can look at directly without shame. The first step sounds simple, but it shatters a lifetime of conditioning. You must learn to see solitude as a capacity, not a punishment. Nietzsche draws a clear line between loneliness that comes from being abandoned and solitude that comes from choice. Abandoned loneliness breaks you down because it tells you that you don't belong. Chosen solitude strengthens you because it tells you that you are selecting the environment in which you can grow. When you choose to live honestly, you will go through a cold season, but it is the cold of someone stepping out of an incubator. That cold teaches you to distinguish between the noise of approval and the engine sound of inner vitality. You don't need a crowd to feel less alone. You need the right people, so you don't have to pretend. The second step is that you must understand the will to power the way Nietzsche intends. You will misunderstand it and turn into someone domineering or someone bitter. At its mature level, the will to power is not the urge to crush others. It is the urge to give life energy a form, to turn inner chaos into an order you yourself create. to turn experience into strength, to turn pain into a work. Nietzsche wants you to pull your energy away from seeking recognition and pour it into creating value. When you are misunderstood, you can waste months arguing your case, or you can use that same energy to write, to learn, to build systems, to train your body, to make something that lets truth speak for you. Nietzsche believes real strength is the strength that can justify itself through its own existence, without begging the crowd to sign off on it. The third step is that you must practice revaluation, because herd morality has taught you to measure yourself by other people's yardsticks. Nietzsche calls this the transvaluation of values, and it begins with a difficult question. Which values make me grow larger in life, and which values make me shrink? Nietzsche does not tell you to destroy every norm, because destruction without replacement leads to nihilism. He tells you to create your own standards, grounded in honesty with your nature, and grounded in the capacity to take responsibility. The fourth step is that you must learn to choose your battlefield of communication. Nietzsche urges the wisdom of the observer. Speak deeply where there is soil for depth to take root, and keep silent where truth will be turned into stones. This is not cowardice, it is the survival strategy of intelligence. You can share something very real in a group chat and receive memes, labels, and smearings because that platform was not designed for depth. You can say the same thing to someone willing to sit still for 10 minutes, and you will see a whole life open. An intelligent person doesn't need everyone to understand them. An intelligent person needs to protect their inner world from cheap dialogues, because cheap dialogues make you doubt yourself. The fifth step, and the step that makes Nietzsche dangerous, is the test of eternal recurrence. Nietzsche doesn't present eternal recurrence as a scientific claim to prove. He presents it as the most ruthless moral mirror. Imagine that you must live this exact life again, with every detail, every choice, and you must live it again like this endlessly. When you place yourself under that assumption, everything false reveals itself. You will see that the days you drift through are, in truth, days in which you are repeating a slow death. Nietzsche's question is not, "Are you happy?" Nietzsche's question is, do you dare to love your life so much that you would be willing to repeat it forever? When you answer honestly, you will know what you must change immediately. Perhaps after all of it, what matters most is not whether you are smarter than anyone, but whether you dare to live like someone awake. Because society will always find a way to turn depth into something suspect, to turn questions into a nuisance. But you were not born merely to fit. You were born to become a distinct form and to take responsibility for that form. When you stop looking for your footing in other people's eyes, you begin to find your footing in your own spine. And then, on a very ordinary day, you will notice the strangest thing. The world is still as noisy as ever, but you no longer tremble before it. You don't need them to understand you. You only need not betray yourself.